either live by the gun or you die by the sword.
Welcome to the Good, the Bad, and the Weird podcast spotlights. I'm Nico.
And I'm Chris.
And today we have a very special guest with us again. Spreader of the cult of Yakuza and like a dragon alike, Kalloth himself. Welcome in, Cal.
Hey everyone, good to be back again. I've been looking forward to this for a long time, ever since we met last, actually, so glad to be back.
Yeah, I've been curious just to sit down and talk about this one too after actually playing the games, because I ended up last year, this was the first movie I watched of the year, so I've watched this movie about 4 or 5 times in the last year and a half now. So it's
wow.
Yeah, I mean I do rewatches. It was some fun to have on in the background, and the first DVD I had sucked and I missed 3 minutes of the story, so had to go back and rewatch that.
Honestly, just as it's kind of full circle now, considering this is one of the very first few games that we really got talking about, because I think I was playing it and you were getting really interested in it. Next thing you know, here we are now. So
yeah, no, exactly. I remember watching you play this, and I had kind of seen some of the gifs here and there. Always the Majima, one or two of him being a creep.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't even know. And then, I think it wasn't 100% you that got me into it. It was also the fact that one of my favorite directors directed the live action adaptation. And so that's part of the reason I got into the movie, because the moment I saw Takashi Miike's name on it, I'm like, all right, I got to watch this just to see what exactly they do. Because I think by that point, you had moved on to either Kiwami or gone back to Zero or something. You were on one of the later ones where it gets a little bit more insane than the first game.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you play the first game and you realize at the time this was 2007 when it came out, they didn't really know where the series was going to go. Or 2005, they just kind of let's just throw it out there and see what happens. And next thing you know, it's now incredibly over the top and chaotic and also serious, but which really shows in the film, actually.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, with my history of Miike, I know Chris hasn't seen a lot of Miike films, and I know his name's bigger now than when I first started watching him and stuff, but it's cool to see his progression go from the super gory grindhouse films and old school Yakuza films, because he started off in 1991 and did a lot of V-cinema or direct-to-video movies up until 2000, early 2000s is when he really kicked off. But his core is Yakuza series, so I was also curious how he was going to translate into this world in itself. And honestly, this is one of his more tame Yakuza movies, believe it or not.
It's one of his more tame movies, period. However, I do think, especially now that he's had so much success with the live action of JoJo, and he's also done, this is not his first or his only live action. He's got a good list of live action adaptations. And so I know a lot of people, when I was looking into it or trying to find a different version to watch, a lot of people were I am solely watching this because I love Takashi Miike's adaptations. I love the brand new game. I didn't even know this movie existed, and now I have to watch it.
Yeah. To give perspective for either of you and for the listeners who don't know, this is Miike's 76th movie. He started in 91. Wow. Yeah, he made 50 movies in a 10-year time frame. He's a powerhouse of movie making.
Look at him go. And honestly, while I think this one, if you are interested in getting started, this is a pretty solid Miike jumping in point. I know it's not as crazy as some of his other ones. However, I do think that it has the Miike touch. There are scenes in here that are undeniably his doing.
Yeah, and I think part of that's just also, it's a combination of Yakuza being Yakuza, and
True.
Then Miike bringing his spin of a little bit of extremity with the nice little touch of humor to it.
I was going to say, his humor is sprinkled really nicely throughout this movie, and I do think it matches from what I've seen of the game, because I've never played it, but I have been watching people play, especially the newer one, because honestly, that's the one everyone's streaming and playing right now.
Yeah.
But I do think that his humor, especially when this was made, as early as it was made in the series, it fits and blends so nicely.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Cal, I think that was the same case with you when we started talking about this game, that I was looking through, I think I Googled something on it and it pulled up the live action. I'm like, hey, this as a movie too, right? Or no, I think you brought up that it had a movie. That's what it was.
So I remember I found it randomly when I was looking around online. I know, like, I think I watched it right after I beat the first game. Didn't really know what to think of it because it was, I mean, that's when I first got into the series, and then rewatched it again. I'm like, oh, okay, this is quite an experience seeing how the series was first starting off to now. So, but yeah.
Well, and I'll get into just a little bit of the credits of the people to give some perspective. It's written by Masashi Sogo and Seiji Togawa, directed obviously by Takashi Miike because this is going to be the middle of the month of Miike, which it's awesome. It stars Kazuki Kitamura, and you'll like this one, Cal. Goro Kishitani, who plays Goro.
That could have been more poetic, honestly.
Yeah. And then the young girl, her name is Natsuo, which is her only that's her only acting name. So for the writers, Sogo has mainly written for anime, including Yu-Gi-Oh!, Gaunt's, the original Ghost Stories, not the American comedically horribly dubbed one. And the only writing credit for Togawa. Kitamura has been on an HBO miniseries that I only found out about because of this, called Folklore. That's all about Eastern Asian folk horror, so I'm very curious on that. But internationally wise, the movie I first recognized him from, and why I had issues seeing him as Kiryu in this movie, was he was in this movie called Killer, where he played a serial killer, and there was a detective, I think in like India, trying to track him down because he found his snuff videos online.
Oh, that's why.
So I saw him as like more of a Majima character. That's why I saw him more as Majima. But he is in Kill Bill Volume 1 and Kill Bill Volume 2 as Crazy 88 number 2 and Boss Koji, as well as Godzilla Final Wars. So that's probably what most people would be able to pull him from stateside.
Yeah, probably Kill Bill for me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have to go watch Kill Bill now. I haven't seen it in forever, and I think about it, but...
Well, that's the thing, and I brought it up in our last episode. Another movie Takashi Miike did called Ichi the Killer was a huge inspiration for Quentin Tarantino, and so there's quite a few crossovers from that movie to Kill Bill as well. So, and some of these actors have carryovers from the Miike alumni.
How poetic, because, I mean, traditionally, one of these directors is really in love with feet, and in this movie we get to just kind of mush some toes into a door.
Yeah. But on the Japanese side of things, Kitamura is a Miike alumni. He's been in Young Thugs, Innocent Blood, Full Metal Yakuza, Andromeda, Ley Lines, the Dead or Alive, or one of the Dead or Alive movies, and also later on some of other Miike's film. Kishitana has not been in any American or international productions, but is also a Miike alumni, appearing in the remake of another Yakuza movie called Graveyard of Honor, which is really good too, as well as One Missed Call. But he's also been in some other little things here and there. And the only thing probably that anyone stateside has seen Natsuo in is Outsider, where she's a stripper in one of the back scenes. But Japanese side, she's been in GTO, Great Teacher Onizuka, and the remake or the live action adaptation of Holic for the live action nerds out there.
A great one.
And for those who don't know what this movie is about,
I still don't, and I've watched it 3 times.
The core of the story is a Yakuza named Kiryu getting out of prison, trying to help a little girl track down her mother.
Okay, see, I got all those points. There's a lot of subplot points that I lost. I lost the point of.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be honest, Chris, you're not the only one, because, like, I'm sure we'll get to it later, but, like, the couple where they kept robbing stores, like, I didn't really get the point of them, and that they were never in the game, and I was really confused of why they even added that in, because I don't really know what the point of that story was, honestly.
No, they are in the game. They're in a very, very small portion of the game.
What?
Yeah, I can't remember if they're a side quest. No, I don't think they're a side quest. They're part of the main quest. It's when you first go to talk to the homeless guy. That's that couple. And that's why I was very confused, like playing the game and then going back and rewatching the movie, because I'm like, this is such a little part, but you've made such a huge emphasis on them for this movie for, I don't know why.
I'm so glad I'm not the only one who was confused, because I seriously spent like 2 days worth of background research trying to find other reviewers online who had both played all the games and watched the movie to like try and connect some missing pieces for me, because I was like, well, maybe it's just because I haven't played the OG games or I haven't watched anyone play them. But no, there was just like a lot of people be like, look, I am a huge fan of the Yakuza games, and even I'm so confused as what's happening.
Yeah,
I mean, they also try to do something really, I think, kind of works some ways, but also didn't, because the entire game set over several years. Like in the very beginning, Kiryu's prison sentence, and then afterwards, versus this is all in one night, which it has some things that work about it, but at the same time, it's kind of hard to tell a story that fast without a lot of exposition. So,
Well,
they cut out like a good amount of characters too.
I mean, you say that, but I'm gonna sound like a pretentious nerd here because this is one of the genres I've been doing a bit of watching on. The Yakuza games follow the very one of the stereotypical Yakuza movie genre tropes. I can't remember. I think it's I don't think it starts off with Battles Without Honor and Humanity, but like in Outlaw Gangster VIP, Graveyard of Honor, there's a lot of young Yakuzas who go to do a hit and then get put in jail and come out years later. And it's a lot of times how they deal with the rest of that. So the Yakuza, I actually appreciate that he didn't follow the same tropes as the previous movies he's done too.
Okay, that's fair.
And I ended up liking the pacing a lot. It like brought the action movie version to it, which I appreciated because like I'm confused, but I'm having a great time.
I think it's one of the best ways to sum up this entire film is some parts don't really make sense, some parts are interesting, but it really was just a good time, but not a great time, but it was entertaining at least for what it was worth.
Yeah, and I've been trying with movies like this to try and keep track of some of more of the stories. Granted, this doesn't have as many subplots as that, like God's Not Dead.
Well, that's hard to beat.
What I broke it down to is you have the robbery, which goes nowhere other than to introduce Date.
Yeah.
Which he also is part of that heist where the $10 billion is missing and is a special crime unit. Kiryu and the little girl, the runaway couple, and then a little bit with the Korean doctor and the bleeding guy, the bleeding assassin, who I don't know if that was a subplot or something that I missed in the games.
Question, what was the purpose of introducing the heat wave to Japan?
Okay, so I think I have a theory on that.
Okay, I would love to hear it.
I'm curious what this is actually, because I think I have an idea, but
because the games historically, I think both, at least as far as I am, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Cal, or if any of the other ones do it. Kiwami takes place around Christmas, and so does Zero. I don't know if any of the other games take place around that time frame.
I think it's only Kiwami, because Zero, they don't really reference like a time of year specifically, but like I know Kiwami does because there's references to like, no wait, I think in the fifth one they kind of like it's set around the winter time, but they don't, and they have Christmas trees in the background, but it's a very brief section, like blink and you'll miss it kind of thing.
Okay. So I think the reason we have the heat wave here is so that way they can it helps build a little bit of like the tension and people like getting pissed off because it's hot around, but also the whole him playing, it's his twist on heat actions.
Yeah, I was thinking that a little bit of, we're kind of on the same page with that, considering they don't really show off the heat actions, but they kind of allude to them a little bit, like in the very beginning where you get the sword guy and then the blue heat wave comes out, or at the very end with Nishki, you see it then. But plus, like, I kind of like that it gave a reason why everyone was so on edge and so angry the whole time versus them just being kind of calm with everything. Everyone was agitated the entire film. Nobody was chill.
But one thing I do appreciate of how this movie starts is I think it captures the chaos that is the Yakuza games to begin with, where we have everything. Instead of like introducing us in small little bits to these side stories, it's all smashed together at the beginning. And on top of that, Kiryu's like introduction feels like he's on a side quest in Don Quixote, and
yeah,
that's where we get introduced to him. But I also appreciate that doesn't go as over the top as some of these other video game adaptation movies go, where it's like we get that little bit of steam off him that's like, okay, this is a video game movie, but it's not every single time he's in a fight or every time someone's fighting, you've got that going on. It's just little nod. We know it's a video game. Move on.
Yeah. See, here's something that I noticed really interesting off the bat is I don't know if it was just me, but like I feel like the guy they cast as Kiryu just didn't do it for me. Like he reminded me, like he had the vibe to him, and he had like I tried looking at the very beginning, like he felt like him, but he didn't feel like him 100%. I don't know if that was just me or not, because I mean, I also think at the end of the day, it's really hard to cast someone like him who is a man with doesn't say a whole lot. He's not a silent protagonist, but also he's not a very talkative versus other, like Majima. Majima's a lot more animated and more out there versus Kiryu's more silent, quiet. Like, I don't know if any Japanese actors really came to mind to you that you would cast that would fit better, because I think he was he was good but not great. But
Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't think of anyone off the top of my head just because it is such a hard role, and I think for what he did, like I told you when I first watched this, I thought they had flipped the characters, casting wise. I've completely gone back on that. I think it was just me seeing him in Killers threw me off a bit, and I think the guy who plays Majima is perfect. But Kiryu, I think what they tried going with, I think they went a little bit too extreme, is there's a heavy focus on that Kiryu just has like this stern look to him, like he's got to stick up his ass, and I didn't get that from this guy, unfortunately.
No, that's probably it too, because but it's also, how do you really capture that in one night? Because we know him because we've seen the very beginning of the game, we've seen him go to prison, we saw a lot of it, so we kind of can fill in the blanks without having it there, but someone like Chris who doesn't know it as well might have a hard time again, he felt like Kiryu, but he didn't feel as much as I wanted him to be. But also, it's just hard to get someone who could capture him that well, because I don't know. I mean, then again, they also got Majima, and he was surprisingly, felt very accurate to the game and accurate to the rest of the games that he's in. So
yeah, especially with rewatching and seeing how he relates to the game itself. Because again, I had only seen a couple little things. I think I'd barely seen you play Kiwami, and most of Majima I had seen from you playing Zero.
Yeah.
And it was, Majima's a much different character in that game, so...
Oh, yeah. He's very calm, he doesn't really snap until the very end, so...
I still haven't gone there, but spoilers.
Anywho.
Yeah, no, I think they did, at least casting-wise, I think for the most part they did a great job. I mean, it's hard to do, especially with how bit characters most of the group is. It just, I don't know, I think it got a little distracted just because there is so much going on. And if you try and really condense the story of Kiryu and what's her name? Haruka?
Yeah, Haruka.
And Majima. And that's actually probably the one thing that pisses me off the most is the very, very little use of Nishki in this at all.
Oh god, I hated that, and I'm glad you agree with me on that one, because I did not like the way they basically put him at the very end, and that's it.
Yeah, and I mean, they mention him a couple times, just very, very early on. They say the Nishki group, or
the Nishki family, but he's not important to this at all. He's just kind of there, and then next thing you know, he's just the final fight of the game of the movie. So
yeah, and in a way, I mean, that's how I felt with Kiwami and how it ended, with that one dude coming in at the end, and I'm like, who the hell is this guy? I've been fighting all these other guys beforehand. Why the hell is he here? So I guess it kind of makes sense, but I wish they would have just not used Nishiki and used that original guy.
Yeah.
I don't know. For me, as someone who wasn't super familiar with the games, I at least knew what the characters were kind of supposed to look like. So, I was able to, piece together who was supposed to be who pretty well. But I do wish that the other characters, not our main man, but everyone else, honestly talked a little bit more about what was happening. Who are we fighting? What are the gangs? What's going on? I don't mind him being, less wordy, because it does kind of give off the, I don't know, gangstery vibe. But I do wish that, the people around him would have a little bit more dialogue, so that someone like me, who really has no idea who some of these people are, I don't have to, find the one sentence to tell me who the end boss is.
Yeah, well, and I probably wouldn't have caught it if I hadn't rewatched it before. I don't know. I get your point, because all the exposition to explain everything is condensed into that first 15-20 minutes of the movie where we're given the setup and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But it tries to do this whole Back to the Future style thing where none of the characters change. It's
True.
Just they're kind of flat throughout the whole thing, which I think that maybe that's the issue, and why if Nishiki, even if Nishiki had been left to delegate to the last character, last boss battle, whatever, if we had more growth between the characters instead of focusing on these 5 other little side stories that go nowhere.
Yeah. Well, I think it just would add more depth to Nishiki, please explain more about him or the other characters as well, because at least in the Kiwami game, you got to see him go from being Kiryu's best friend at the very beginning to slowly distancing himself to the point where you don't even recognize him. And I mean, as violent as he ended up becoming towards the very end. I mean, because really a lot of it was they didn't really show it. They just kind of told us about him a little bit, and then again he appears at the very end. You see more of the family that works for him versus actually Nishiki, because I'm pretty sure he only made that one appearance at the very, very end where you see him in the Millennium Tower, and that's really it.
Yeah, in the movie, yeah. I don't know. I just, like you said, it's a fun time, but
Yeah.
it definitely doesn't go anywhere. But the one thing, like, I will say that they do get right is really, it's a thing that I get annoyed with when I watch video game or anime live action adaptations of movies, where it's always like, oh, hey, look, we did the thing because it's a video game and you're fans of this, so hey, they said that line.
Fan service. Yeah.
Like, finish him in Mortal Kombat, the newest one, where it's like, I get it, but it's kind of cheesy and doesn't fit with what you're doing here.
Well, like, it's just forced by that point. It doesn't feel natural. So I agree with you. I get you.
Mm-hmm. But I will say that's the one thing about this one is it didn't feel like that, especially when you start getting into like all the districts. Because also, this is the second movie we've covered this month that will be based on Kabukicho district in Shinjuku, which is the real life red district of Tokyo, or red light district. So I think they did a good job recreating that world. I mean, hell, we see Don Quixote without knowing it. They bring up the Beam DVD store. I mean, there's a lot of like little nods in the background that, hey, we get to see these places, but it's not so in your face of like, by the way, we're running to here now. But that's the other thing that annoys me too, is like, I think they did some good things of jumping the timeline, where they brought the cell phone, where he opens it up and they're like, oh yeah, these became popular while you were away. So it shows he's been away for a long time, but it doesn't focus on the main change to the area, the big tower, which we get to see like a couple aerial shots.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think it also did a really good job just setting in the universe as well. Like, when you play the first game, like, it felt very much like you were right there as well. I mean, as best as they could have done, considering not every single adaptation can pull it off in a way that looks like natural for a movie, or doesn't look, like you said, too much like fan service or forced fan service by then. So,
and I am curious because I haven't watched it yet. It's like 98 cents on Amazon. I just haven't done it yet. Miike also directed a live action Ace Attorney film, but I don't know how you can make that without being as fan servicey as possible at that point.
I kind of am curious how that actually turned out, considering I don't really know Ace Attorney that well, but I also know how incredibly over the top it is, or incredibly cheesy it is, or I've seen all the memes online. So
I mean, I don't know. I think there's things that Miike tried to do, and I think part of it is he tried appealing to so much of a larger audience compared to like probably what the games were, because this movie came out in 2007, so same year as the original game, right?
Yeah, I think like a couple years afterwards, but that's, I think, one of the things he does really well, which maybe it's his style, because I don't know if you actually play like the original Yakuza, where it was very different. I mean, the combat was still there. A lot of they had a lot of stuff for Kiwami specifically, but the series was not as over the top then. It was more of a serious crime drama. And seeing how he adapted, like, one of the things that I think the best thing about this entire film was just how much he got Majima right, with how over the top he was, because that really was not a thing. Like, he was like that, but not as exaggerated or as playful or as animated. He was just kind of a crazy guy you saw who had a knife, essentially. So I think he did a very good job with him. Like, even in the batting cage where he was fighting Kiryu, in that part where he actually stops to go hit his guys. And it's like, okay, let's proceed, and then goes and poses again so he can start wailing on him again.
Well, and even rearranging some of Majima's story, too, because that's one thing I thought was interesting, is the first time we meet Majima, he's being the shit out of his own men at the batting cage, which is how we're introduced to him, at least in Kiwami. So the rearranging of stuff to make it work, and also condensing down that, hey, he's searching for Kiryu, and also the way that he took what would have been like really serious, violent scenes and gave them a comedic twist. Like, even with a shotgun, Majima's a comedic character.
Yeah, no, he's the best thing in this whole movie, hands down.
Yeah.
Yeah, he really is.
Well, and also, and maybe it's just because it's been on my mind a little bit to rewatch, but watching them walk down the street with the baseball bats made me think of the Axe Gang from Kung Fu Hustle.
Yeah, no, 100%. But I don't know, I think his scenes work the best because, yes, he's over the top and he's silly. And I mean, like, just look at him. He dresses silly. He acts silly. He's got an eye patch, for Christ's sakes. That's sometimes on the correct eye and sometimes not. But but at the end of the day, all of his actions do like he does not really tone down the violence. He just adds a goofiness to them. Like they just walk down the street beating the hell out of random people. But not him. He's just having a nice saunter around the street.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe that's what makes the Nishki fight seem so poor. And I think maybe it's just also, I think there's a little bit more to it. I think Miike was trying to avoid being too similar to another movie he did called The Way to Fight, which is about two people who are kind of put together to fight each other at some point at the climax. But that I think that's what sucks about this movie is we get our climax between them, and we still have like 20 minutes of the movie left to go, where they've built up this whole thing, and in the very beginning it's like, oh, there's going to be blood in the streets because these guys are going to fight finally.
Well, and here's the other thing too, is all of the rest of the violence in this movie, and especially the fighting, takes place or happens somewhere interesting, like in the middle of the street during a crowd, or at a batting cage, or like he's beating up his own men, which is not what you were expecting. And then their fight, well, I mean, if you've played the game, it's different, but if you're just watching the film, like you get to be like, oh, this is a good introduction for this guy. I know what to expect now as far as like who he is, what his character is. And then you have their like final fight, and they're in an empty warehouse with somehow a sliding little window. And then like everyone's just standing around dance battle style, be like, fight, 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 which I mean
that does
I know it does, but for the movie it doesn't add anything to this promise that I was given of over the top violence and like blood running through the streets. Like, why not fight at a bar? Why not fight at a restaurant or a dance club? Or like, I know we have a game to stick to, but we've also obviously butchered the game quite a bit. Why not take it a little bit farther?
That's where like I understand, again, like it all makes sense why he did the set over a one night, but if you had that time to expand the characters, like it would have hit so much harder. Like at the very, like I was upset fighting Nishki because he really is your best friend turning into, you have to take him on at the very end, and it doesn't really, like you said, doesn't deliver. Like it hypes up to be this really big grand battle, but really the fight between Kiryu and Majima is the absolute best thing in the entire, like any scene, the two of them, especially their fight scenes were the best parts of it. Like, I mean, it was underwhelming with Nishki for the most part, so.
Yeah, and I do wonder if it's because of, like, Miike's rise in popularity. I mean, this is a man who does so many different things. I mean, he's directed some of the goriest stuff out there that's inspired horror films, like his film Ichi the Killer also inspired Hostel. Gozu came out 4 years before this, and I wonder if it's just maybe him toning down a little bit or exploring some of his other stuff, because I mean, I know he does get some, unfortunately most of his like newer stuff isn't readily available, but like when you compare how Yakuza goes to something like his 2019 movie First Love, not a video game or movie adaptation, that takes it over the top. It's about a couple who kind of have their first date that goes horribly wrong because they get involved with the underground crime gangs and stuff.
True. But I do think that he's one of those directors who does have in his wheelhouse the ability to like have very big extremes. Granted, like it still reads as a Miike film. It's got his touch of humor sprinkled throughout. It's got his like creativity when it comes to gore and violence, even if it is inspired by the game. Nobody can do a torture scene like Miike.
No.
But he does have that like flexibility and that willingness to not just tone himself back, but try a different style.
True, and I don't know how well it works with this adaptation though. I mean, I don't know how many. Do you watch a lot of video game adaptations, Cal?
I mean, as of recently, I'm starting to watch more of it. Like I mean, granted, Sonic is not a good comparison, but I mean, I've seen the Sonic movies, Last of Us, obviously. Apparently, the new Fallout show just came out, and I heard it was really good. So I'm planning on watching that this weekend, seeing how it turned out. I don't really know Fallout that well, but everyone's saying it's pretty positive. So,
yeah, that one is good.
Okay, yeah, I don't know. I think because I'm trying to think of like where in film adaptation history.
Yeah, I don't think they did anything really great at the time when it came to video game adaptations. Considering at least before all that,
I mean, Tomb Raider was definitely
Right. I forgot about that.
Like, the gold standard for a long time.
Yeah, which that came out in 2001. That's what I was looking up, was the date of when Tomb Raider came out. And granted, I haven't really done a deep dive into like the Japanese side of video game adaptations. I've just recently found out that there's probably a couple hundred adaptations of anime and manga that I didn't even know existed.
There's a whole subgenre of live action musicals to movies and shows that A, were not a musical to begin with, and B, had no business being a musical, but they are now, and I'm on a quest to watch them.
Oh yeah, like 2001, Miike directed a musical called The Happiness of the Katakuris. That's a remake of a Korean film that's a serious drama.
Yes, exactly. No business being a musical.
I'm also 95% sure there's a Yakuza musical of this. Takes place the very first game, because I stumbled across it last night before I went to bed. Unfortunately, there isn't any English subtitles, but I mean, I'm sure if you watched it, you probably could figure out what's going on. Chris, it might be a little hard because you don't know the game as well, but still, it's not bad for what I saw. I mean, it tries. I think A for effort, at least, so.
Yeah, and I mean, I've done that where I've watched a handful of foreign movies that they didn't have subtitles, and it was on YouTube at the time, so...
You just hope for the best.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd like to do a dive because I can't remember how many... I think this is only like one of like 2 video game adaptations that Miike's done. This and Ace Attorney. Most of his stuff has been like manga, like Blade of the Immortal, and we've said JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. And I wonder if it's just... And maybe you're onto something there, Cal, is maybe they just didn't know how to really adapt it at that time, since we're still in the mid-2000s or late 2000s where video games are still kind of that niche thing that, your kids play.
True.
Yeah. Well, I think it's, at least in the past few years, and I kind of credit The Last of Us for making it be taken seriously, considering nobody really did a good like Sonic wasn't bad, but it was not a groundbreaking film, but it was just okay. I had low expectations anyways, considering I'm sure you guys probably saw the original test footage or how Sonic looked, and I'm like, oh, it wasn't great. So, but yeah, I mean, they're now like, I still think superhero genres is oversaturated, and it's more video games are becoming the new blockbuster now, because clearly there's a story to be told. Like, Mario made over $1 billion, and Mario did very well, pretty good for the most part. They already have a lot planned with it as it is, so we're still trying to figure things out with video game adaptations. But at least recently, we've been doing kind of well. Like, there hasn't been a bad video game movie or TV show. Like, even Twisted Metal, I heard, was not bad, but not great. So
yeah, I don't know. I haven't been keeping an eye on too much of new stuff. I know the new Sonic movies have been good as well. I did watch the new Super Mario Bros. Movie, and like, for a kids movie based off of a game that doesn't really have much of a plot to it.
Okay, see here, this is where I have a theory.
Okay.
I think the video game movies that have done the best have been video game movies where there is a ton of lore but not a specific game with plot. Example being Detective Pikachu, or the Mario movie, or the Sonic movies. Like, we have the lore of those characters, and then you can make up the story however you want. And so I think that's where a lot of things like the Yakuza movie is going to struggle against, is the game already comes with a story built in. It's already got all the characters fleshed out for you, and like, characters fleshed out is not the same thing as character lore.
Yeah.
And it makes it a lot harder for them to like completely rework it into something that's their own.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard with narratives. Like, I think it's the whole silent protagonist issue that we run into, where we get invested in a lot of games because our protagonist doesn't really have a quote-unquote voice. It's the voice we give them. Whereas when you take something that has a very defined story and you try and, I wouldn't even say squish it down. I think he took the core of it and then tried padding it out without like really adding on to it. When you do that, I think you just lose the core of what people enjoy about the original property. And I try and keep them separate. But this one, it's a little harder to do, just because if you break down the whole Kiryu, Majima, Haruka's story, you gotta know that's only like maybe an hour, 20 minutes, I'd say. And then the rest of it's the filler side stories.
That's true, but there is like some cool crime stuff that, like, granted, he didn't have time to put in because he was more interested in getting the fans what they were looking for, which was certain character interactions, certain characters showing up. But there is a good base crime, like, thing happening in the background that if we wanted to, we could have explored more, and I would have been interested. And I don't know anything about the games when I first watched it. I was very invested in this bank robbery for a bank that with no money in it.
Yeah. They do a lot more with Jinju in the game and his entire story, because they really just kind of allude to him being there. Also, I don't know if you knew this, but Toshihiro Nagagoshi, the guy who actually created Yakuza, is actually Jinju. I don't know if you found that from all your research you were doing, because he was just kind of there in the background, didn't do anything, but he was just there. Dice. I thought it was kind of funny that out of all the people that could have casted as him, because I remember when I was watching it, I'm like, oh, that's not him, and I'm like, no, that's definitely him. That's funny. Why would they? Oh, and now he's dead. Cool. So
yeah,
well, it's like cameos. There's I was reading Agitator: The Films of Takashi Miike by Tom Mess, and for those who have been listening to this series so far, we're not using his basis or his writing as a basis for any of these talks, but this movie does definitely fit in with Miike's repertoire. Miike had the same thing where he's been guests in other people's movies, where he was in one, he gets killed off in another director's film too. So I think it's just like those nice little cameos to be like, hey, we want you in the film, but you get a little cameo bit instead of being one of the big guys, you know? M. Night Shyamalan-ing it.
Yeah.
with more class.
Yes.
Like, I like this film, but at the same time, like, if I didn't know Yakuza at all, I probably would have stopped watching this, because, like, it's nothing great by any means, but it's very interesting. I think it's like you said, it's a good background movie, or it's entertaining for seeing like where they thought the series could have potentially gone, or how much they just don't get. Like it's kind of like watching an adaptation, but also like I don't really want to say I'm watching it ironic, because I do kind of enjoy some things about it, but at the same time, like there are things they just got completely wrong. Like when they had the fight between Majima and Kiryu, and they got in the gunfight, and Kiryu, I mean, I think it's a mistranslation, because I'm trying to figure out the actual meaning behind it, but apparently he says he doesn't kill, but in the actual like Japanese dialogue, he says he tries not to. So I think just they kind of threw it out the window with that entire fight. He's like, oh, he's got a gun, and he's killing everybody here. That's like it felt really odd to see, but at the same time, like I do get why they had to do it, and I think it fits with this movie kind of well. So. But I mean, that gunfight was something. Let's put it that way. Like, not what I expected. I would have rather a fist fight, but you know.
So I actually kind of enjoy that gunfight. I think it's very cheesy in how great it is. I mean, it's classic, just really bad gangster film.
Yeah.
Where you've got the guys pumping this entire bar full of lead, and this dude's hiding behind a flimsy bar.
No, it's like solid steel bar. This is the most rock solid.
But what I think about that scene specifically, and why I think I appreciated it, is because it does round out Majima's character just a little bit. Where Haruka's gonna go upstairs, but she's gonna sneak through all the gunfighting, and then while she's trying to sneak through in the middle of it, Majima just makes them all stop. And
to
just
reload.
No, not even to reload, just to let the girl get up safe.
That's true.
Because it shows clearly that he doesn't give a shit about anything else other than this rivalry between him and Kiryu, which is why I think they should have skipped the entire 10 billion yen bit, or maybe make it a little smaller portion of it. But because I mean, honestly, you forget about it until like you get up to the roof of that battle and it's all just there. But like, make them the focus of this movie.
Yeah.
Get rid of Nishki altogether. Get rid of you gotta have Haruka's mom to explain it. But like, maybe just blend everything a little bit more together, or actually interconnect everything like you did at the very beginning, where the young couple run into Kiryu fighting the people, and then run into them a second time, or run into the Korean assassin in the illegal weapon shop.
So as someone who went into this with no pre-knowledge, like I started watching gameplay after I watched this, after I wrote my review, and I did that intentionally because you mentioned we were going to do this one. I was like, okay, I don't know this game yet. I've been purposely putting it off. I'm going to put it off a little longer so that I can be the test guinea pig. I think this movie works better if you know nothing about the franchise, because there's so many story plot points that don't work if you don't know any of these characters. The names get hard to keep separated, minus the main two characters, because honestly, they're the only ones I care about, and I honestly did not realize they were friends until the literal end of the movie.
Oh, they're not really friends. They're like frenemies, I think is the better term, right, Cal?
Yeah, because like you see a little bit in Zero, and I'm not gonna go into too much, but like he's your good friend, and then in Kiwami he's still like one of your good friends for that reason. But like you slowly over time just basically becomes your enemy at a point. So
yeah, the dialogue in this is so quick and so like hard to keep up with that if you don't know these characters ahead of time, you miss the like one or two little snips to tell you who and how these people are related to each other. So instead of watching like this complex characters interact with each other, you're just watching a bunch of caricatures pretend to be gangsters in Japan, and honestly that's a lot of fun. I had a blast when I was just watching this as like a bunch of little bits that happened to tie together almost like skit style. I had a fantastic time. It wasn't until afterwards when I was trying to like research with the game knowledge on like how everything was going together, why was the timeline messed up, that's when I started like getting really, really confused. Before that, I had a fantastic time, and I was missing like almost 10 minutes of the movie at one point.
Yeah, the original DVD that I let Chris borrow, right when you get to the batting cages, it's if you don't fast forward enough, or you get to it and it skips like 20 minutes into the movie, so you have to rewind all the way back to it, and then if you rewind too far to wherever the disc is corrupted, it sends you to the very, very beginning of the movie. So
But even with that problem, before I did research, I was having a great time because there was enough of like this background mystery of like the bank heist or like why we're fighting that like they do explain in the movie, but not enough for someone who doesn't know this story or these characters. It's not spelled out strongly enough, or maybe it's just, the translation isn't like nearly as like complete as I need it to be. I don't know which, but it didn't really matter when I was just there having a good time. It wasn't until after I like realized that, oh, these guys were supposed to be friends at one point and now they're rivals, or oh, that's actually her mom, as opposed to like a funny bit of like, mommy, oh, she's dead.
yeah, I kind of agree with your point about that, considering, like, if now that I really think about it, had some time to reflect, like, it really is one of those, like, turn your brain off and don't think way too much about it, because as soon as you start doing that, it's, like, I was kind of, like, in my head thinking, like, oh, this, like, could be, like, I was having a tough time with scores about this, because, like, when I watched this, I was trying to pay full attention to it, but, like, talk about it now, like, and even seeing the Reddit, like, no one took it seriously, like, no, it's, like, it's just, it's a product of its time. And it's, like I said, it's just very interesting to see how much, maybe it's probably because of Miike's style of where this was going to go, because they were not as over the top and crazy. They were not over the top and as weird. Like, even like the hostages, when the robbers are there trying to go for the money and they end up eating, I think, sushi with them. Like, that feels very much like what would happen in the game, because that's just some weird shit that would just randomly happen. Like, oh, they're having dinner together. Okay, cool. Like, I could see that being a sub store, or I could see that happening in one of the games, because, like, that just shit like this happens pretty frequently. So
no, I get that. I think you're right, where it's just, it probably is best to go into this movie without really any expectation or understanding of the movie itself, or the games themselves, or the Yakuza genre, because it is a fun movie, and like, for the most part, I know that I think I think I've realized what the issue is too, is it puts in too many MacGuffins without really focusing on one or having it pay off.
Yeah.
Because even Kiryu and Haruko's journey to find her mother, like you said, boom, you see her for like a minute and she's dead.
And then they literally follow that up with, oh no, your mom's dead, but at least you're alive. And it was the funniest thing I've ever seen. And then it literally ends with her being like, so you're my dad now, right? And he's like, yep, I guess so. And I was like, yeah, I called it.
not even. And then that's it. I remember watching it, I'm like, that's it? Like, that's how we're gonna end this? Like, just, oh, but don't worry, you're still alive. End credits. I'm like, what? That, just her being like, hi, I'm your mother. Okay, goodbye. I'm gonna blow up this building now. It's so Jinju can't get the money. Like, I couldn't stop laughing at that the entire time, because, like, it was so brief, but, like, it again, one of those things, if you played the games, you'd understand more of her character and why she was important, instead of just being there for not even 5 minutes. Like, you probably film all that, like, one day, if anything.
I mean, it's Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and if you haven't seen it, it goes from being like, oh, that's why she did it, to, wow, that was random, tee-hee.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, we dance around the whole last battle with Nishki, and the only reason Kiryu goes to fight him is because he took Haruka. Like, that's the only motivation we have, is just like... Yeah.
That's it.
Oh, and also, God, what's his name? His Yakuza father. He's in the movie for, like... Yeah, Kazuma. Kazuma's in the movie 2 minutes.
Not even. Like, he was so brief, and, like, one of the things, he was trying to go find him for most of the movie as well. He's like, oh, hey, what's up, Kido? Okay, bye. Like, he... Very brief, considering how important he is in the game as well. See, and, like, they could do so much with that.
Yeah.
Another MacGuffin that's not used to its full extent.
I don't know, he kind of felt like Yakuza Simba's dad.
They could have done so much more with that as it is, considering how important he is in the game. Like, even when you're going into the Tojo clan headquarters in the beginning, you get shot and you have to get out of there, and that... Also, that's another thing they didn't even bring up, that could have been a really good thing to show in a flashback, but... I think one of the things I liked at the very end is they kind of just leaned in with all the campiness, because, like, in all the Yakuza games, there's always the final battle between the main protagonists and the antagonists. They always rip their shirts off, they show off their tattoos.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like that at least they found a way to fit it in there without being overly cheesy, but it was enough that at least they could put it in there, I mean, purely for fan service, because that was actually really cool to see the tattoos. CGI-wise, with the helicopter and that scene as well, that could have been a little better, but again, product of its time. But
well, and not just that too, but I think we have to divorce ourselves from our expectation for special effects in movies, just because Japanese movies in general, they don't have the same budget as American films.
I didn't hate the CGI, for especially the helicopter, because, like, again, like, well, and my expectations were already below the ground when I started this movie, because, like, I didn't have the game to be like, oh, well, these characters could potentially get better. I started the movie and I was like, wow, we have 2 dudes in stockings yelling at each other, and then they dunk their heads in water because they're toasty. Like, all right, my expectations are set. Let's go.
yeah, and that honestly, that kind of fits in with the whole Yakuza vibe of everything being tragic and hilarious all at the same time. I mean, there's only like one really brief scene with the helicopter. I'm like, that's noticeable, and then next thing you know, it's just gone. But
yeah, I don't know. Like we've been talking, it's a fun time. It's just like I said, I'm looking at this. I know I'm looking at it from a very critical eye at this point. I mean,
if this isn't what would have gotten me into the video games, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I enjoyed the heck out of watching this. I'm excited to borrow a copy that's, like, got nicer sub captions and, like, works on my DVD player so I can watch on the big screen as opposed to my little screen. But yeah, I'm interested in the Yakuza games because everyone's playing the new one, not because of this movie.
Like, I think it's a nice, like, if you're already into the series, you'll end up having a good time with this, or, like, it's not the best introduction, but it's, like, a nice supplement to, like, keep it going with it, because at the end of the day, like, I kind of do see this as, like, a movie in the universe in a way, because at the end of the day, like, it only focuses really on Kiryu and Majima, and, like, I always have, like, a headcanon of, like, says they got Majima really right of his obsessiveness with him, that to a point, like, this could easily just be Majima's own film that he made for himself to go watch, because honestly, that's something he would probably do, considering how obsessed he is with Kiryu. So, and he makes him look like he's damn near perfect in it. Like,
yeah, I mean that's exactly like, and when Majima Everywhere and there's a zombie mission, like it just
yeah, exactly. He's so committed to it.
Yeah, and I think that's the other thing too. I mean, I know we've bitched about how this movie breaks Yakuza lore and whatnot, but it also does get a lot of things I think right, just not cohesively right in its own universe, because it's trying to be too much of the game without letting itself be free and do its own thing.
I mean, I give credit where credit's due, because they for everything they did right, they did a couple things wrong, but at the same time, like, how do you also tell a story about a game that's, let's say, like 40 hours long altogether, all the sub-stories? Because to me, when I play it, I go for the story. I'll find a sub-story on the way, and I'm like, oh, let's go check this out while we're at it. I'll go grind for a little bit. Like, you'll play it differently than I would, and Chris will play differently than I would. So it's hard to... I mean, that's also the issue with many video games being adapted, is how do you... Like, my version of when I played this was very different from the way you played it, because, like, we were in different parts of our life then. I think I played Kiwami for the first time, like, 3 years ago, or 2 years ago. So we had a different mindset going into it as well. So it's hard to adapt that for everybody. So
Yeah, like for example, when I was playing Kiwami, you popped in on me on the second to last boss fight, and I still didn't know how to equip weapons in the game.
oh god, and the fact that you played the entire game without even knowing that, like, yeah, you could just do it on the D-pad. What? Yeah, you just do it in the D-pad, the menu, and I kind of wish you had camera on just for that, like, to see, like, oh wow, huh?
Yeah, guess who's been playing all of Zero without that too? Ooga booga strats just get overpowered and beat the shit out of them.
I mean, it works. You leveled up your beast style and just decided to wreck everybody with tables and couches. So if the shoe fits,
yeah, to the point where I will specifically stall the battle so I can beat someone with a specific item. Well, and I mean, back to the movie just a little bit and what it got right. I think it got the setting right 100%. I think it got everything right between Majima and Kiryu. I just don't think anything else outside of that. I think it got really great at.
I have to give credit to one thing because it fit in with the cheesiness of what I kind of wanted with it. Was with at the very end, because really, I mean, it's like any other boss fight. You go in, you get your ass kicked at first. Kiryu pops out his drink. He drinks, I think it was like a stamina light or something, and then goes in just beast mode and fucks everyone up. Like I really like. I can't remember what, but still, like I loved that because that was so much with like. It felt like I was playing the game then because. That's what I did when I fought Nishki at the very end. I had to pop a drink because I had such low health at a point anyways. So, and that just pure cheesiness there just fits in so well with it. Or the pharmacy beforehand.
Yeah, it was the X stamina drink.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, no, yeah, like I said, I think they did some stuff good. It's just there's so much of the nothingness outside of that doesn't add to it all, you know?
Well, here's something that I wonder that I didn't get a chance to look into as well before this was apparently there's like a short film that's attached to this where it actually focuses on Kiryu, Nishki, and Yumi. It's like a 40-minute short film that actually goes into their characters more, like when Kiryu and Nishki grew up in the orphanage together and whatever they call it now. They've changed the name a couple times, but I kind of wish I watched that to see if maybe my opinion of the movie would have changed because they fleshed out the characters more and maybe that could have also fit in well with the movie as well. But at the same time, for what it's worth, it's a fun time. It's a fun time, and I can probably put it on any point and like laugh at it in the background and just like, oh, there's that one scene that I like, and then go back to what I'm doing. So
yeah, and I mean, like I knew that the other piece of media existed too, but I also don't think that. I think it's a sign of poor movie writing if you have to go back or go ahead of it and make basically a prequel to your story to make it have meaning with like this is like the first iteration of what you're doing. It's not like you made a good movie then you went back and did an origin story or you did a sequel. You should have made this one to stand on its own.
I watched it.
You did?
Yeah, I watched it because I thought it was this one.
Okay.
So because so I watched your DVD twice and it was still broken. I was like, oh shit, I don't want to break it more. Let me just Google real quick before I text you and be like, ah shit, I'm sorry, man, your DVD. My bad. So I like you throw it into YouTube because that was a comment on like the Reddit thread for this was like, oh yeah, it's just on YouTube. You can watch this movie like really easily. And so you type in Google, it's the first thing that popped up. It was live action. I was like, oh, that's gotta be it. It's so serious. There's not a lick of humor at all in it. It's so straightforward. It's so like pinpointing the like emotional trauma of these kids and like how they grew up and like where like it does like if you're into these characters from the video game, like yes, that movie will like add more and like you'll get to really see them and how like their friendship was when they were children and like yeah, that made like their rivalry later make sense. However, I watched a movie, was trying to find 10 minutes worth of the movie, thought I found the movie, watched that movie and went, okay, this isn't the same movie at all. I wasn't even aware they were in the same universe until I watched the first version again.
Okay.
So, like, I don't think it's adding anything. I don't think it's like, oh, we went back and we remade it to, like, add to this movie. I think it's a completely standalone, in its own field version of telling the story.
Maybe give a little reason why Nishki's even in it at all.
Honestly, yeah. And, like I said, like, if you if you're really in it for like the video game lore part, I think then it makes sense. But yeah, like if you're just having a fun with this movie and like you're like looking for more explanation on the characters in this movie, that movie has nothing to do with it.
Interesting. Because they don't actually
Yeah.
go into them really being kids in Kiwami at all. I thought that I remember, like I think they reference like maybe a couple scenes here and there where you see Kazuma and the two of them, but nothing really that extensive for them. They usually just see them in like modern, or I guess the modern times then when they're doing their thing. So
there's one flashback where in the game they're talking about the day they joined the Yakuza, and that's
Right,
the only
yeah.
time you see that.
Yeah, it's a much more serious take, and like it's only 40 minutes, so you don't get like a ton of build or anything. It's definitely a little bit more artsy styling too. Like this is very Miike. It's very action packed. The pace is quick. There's like dark humor throughout the whole thing. The other ones, it's a fully different style too. So like I don't know. I don't feel like they go together unless you're like on a binge for every piece of Yakuza media in one go.
Yeah. From your description, I can 100% see that.
Yeah. Like, it's not worth watching, but I wouldn't watch it as, like, a precursor to this movie.
Okay. So, Cal, do you got any other thoughts on this before we go to ratings?
I kind of do want to see them try to take another take at this eventually, like another game in the series. Like, I don't know which one they could even do at this point, because they're all... I don't know, because this could have been also the one that really could have done with an adaptation. I mean, maybe if they ever decide to get around it again, they could try adapting 2, considering that was made around the similar time frame, and like there are some touches of it as well, because again, they didn't really know where the series was going to go at the time until later in I think 3 and 4, so it got really comedic and over the top. So, but for what it's worth, I mean, I had a fun time with it. It was good to see it.
Yeah, and I get your point. I do want to see more movies adapted from this property, because I think they could do a good job with it. I agree, at least from what I've seen and what I played. 0 would be really hard to do. I don't think it'd be really hard. It'd just be a little hard to push it, just because that one does get a bit over the top. And I'm thinking maybe
maybe as a TV show.
Yeah, actually, I think you're right on that. I think that's the issue with video game and movie adaptations is.
Yeah.
And especially we saw that with manga too. Like later this month, we're going to be talking about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Miike's live action adaptation of that, where like it was good, but you don't have the continuation of it because they're never making a part 2. So I think that's the one thing is if you like the video games, I think have more of a leeway, unless it's like a really short, like 4-hour campaign or something. You have a lot of material that you could really spread out. And I think that's why when we talked about The Last of Us, why that one works so well is because
they could take their time with everything.
Even though like one of the episodes of The Last of Us I still think is pointless, the rest of it is still great to like build the world and story and like actually expand upon the characters that I don't think they could have done the same way in a movie format.
Yeah. Like off of that, like I think they could do a really good job by taking their time. Like if they did, let's just say 10 episodes, they can focus on like half being Kiryu and other half being Majima if they ever adapted 0, for example, and they could really take their time with the characters, because like with this, like I said, we brought up in the beginning, they did it a one-night story instead of going over time, and that could give the time to flesh out the characters, maybe add more to them without also having to have like another film that takes place. And I think it'd be more entertaining because you could focus like more on the other sub-stories, or if they could develop stories that actually will go somewhere instead of just kind of being there in the background for fillers. So
yeah,
but again,
no, exactly. Chris, you got any last thoughts?
Yeah, I think while I don't have any strong ties to like the game and the characters based from the game, I did really like the styling that was this like movie. I really thought like this had a nice, refreshing, like dark humor added to the Yakuza styling. And I also think it's popular right now. Like that sort of thing is really like been in media much more prevalently. Like there's a bunch of newer mangas and animes that have been out that's similar vibes or same humor style. And so I would be interested in seeing another movie in the same styling. I don't know if it's necessarily the same world or if it's just like we take characters and we do our own side story, or like you said, it's one of the characters in the game making his own movie. Like, but I do really enjoy the style. I really enjoyed the action. I enjoyed what bit of plot that made sense from start to end in just the movie sense. So like I'd be very interested in another one. I think it'd also be popular with people who are like getting back into the Yakuza themed stuff right now. So like I think it'd be good.
Plus, like, the games got really popular within the past, like, I want to say like 10-ish years. Yeah, it's like 10-ish years now because of Zero coming out, and that's when people started to notice the series. Like, and I think like because now Infinite Wealth just came out and people are still talking about it and playing it, like I think it could do well in the world we live in now, because I don't think we were even ready for a Yakuza adaptation back in 2007, because movies were very different then, and at least the way things were. I mean, even then, like you mentioned before, video game movies were not really serious then. They were kind of like you said, Tomb Raider was the thing at the time. I only remember Mortal Kombat, and even then it was okay. Wasn't great, wasn't bad, but it got some things right, but it just wasn't a great film in general. It did a couple things right.
The remake Mortal Kombat.
The 90s one with like the OG one, like that's the only one I really knew of video game movies in the 2000s. But
so, and I did a deep dive on this years ago now at this point, where I watched everything I could get my hands on. The Angelina Jolie adaptation does have this, there's a shift in attitude towards video game movie adaptations that happens around that era, at least stateside, that they start taking them a little bit more seriously, because even though that movie's cheesy, it plays into the game without being, hey, look, we did the thing from the game.
Mm-hmm.
But we haven't had that like 100% like fusion of the two medias that really work together. I will say though, Cal, a movie I do recommend you giving a watch, and I think it has the style and feel that you're wanting from the Yakuza games in movie form. It's Sion Sono movie. It's called Why Don't You Play in Hell? It's about a film crew who gets caught up in a Yakuza feud. It's a little bit of a slow burn, but I think the humor has exactly what you're looking for. And it's in a similar vein. Sion Sono is a similar director to Miike at times. So
okay, yeah, I'll definitely give it a watch then, if anything.
So Cal, at the end of it all, good, bad, weird rating. I don't know if you remember it. Well, how do you rate this movie?
It's weird. It's weird because I really, like I said, I didn't expect this to be one of the greatest films of all time, but also I had like medium expectations for it, and I remember it being a little bit better in my head, and watching it now, and I'm like, wow, this is it's trying, it's doing its best. I mean, so I definitely give it a weird.
Chris?
It's on the verge of a good weird for me, but I think I'm going to stick to just weird. I really enjoyed it. It has lots of the weird elements that I was hoping for from the previews and from what I did know of the game. The only reason I'm not going to go all the way and give it the good weird is because while I really enjoyed watching it, I had a hard time following the plot to the point where, like, watching it again without reason to, like, talk about it, and I'm not gonna like go and turn around and play the games this week, I don't have enough to connect me to it. I think if there had been just a little bit more dialogue or a little bit more like follow through on some of the plot points, then it could have been good and weird for me.
Okay, I am gonna deviate from both of you. I don't think it's weird enough for me. I give it a good bad rating because I think at its core it does a good chunk of the Majima Kiryu relationship very well, and same with Haruka. I just think the motivations are piss poor and the execution doesn't work. And even then, like with Majima being as little bit weird of a character as he is, he's not as extreme or as weird as, like, say I watched a movie last night called Turbo Kid, like any of the combatants or characters in that. He very much reminds me of like a Stephen Chow movie of like the Axe Gang or Shaolin Soccer, where it doesn't go too far in. It's not as weird as I would expect it to be, considering like the source material, even within the world itself. There's no, hey, I finished a bowling side quest, now I have a chicken advisor for my realtor or a real estate company.
I was a little sad there wasn't karaoke.
Yeah, I will say that is the one thing, like, of all.
Oh yeah, right.
Of all the things, because in Kiwami, I never went to any of the adult stores other than Beam to get the illegal weapons. But like, I never did the karaoke. But I know it's such a big part of the series, and maybe it's back to the fact that they didn't know where the series was gonna go, and maybe it hadn't fully blown up to be what it is.
Well, that, and I mean, the guy who voices Kiryu, he also is a rock singer. Like, I think he has a band called like I think it's the Goodfellas. So, I mean, if you look on YouTube, you can find some of his performances, and he's pretty decent. But I don't know if that's something that they were just trying to lean into more because he's actually pretty decent of a singer.
Okay.
So
yeah, I don't know. And I don't think I've seen the guy who portrayed Kiryu in the live action in anything musically inclined at all. So maybe that's why they kept it out. Probably because it doesn't fit in, especially with like how some of the other stores are. Because we don't even go to any of the restaurants or anything. Because I think we do. We start off in the beef bowl place. That's that place, and I think maybe like Cafe Alps or something. But even then, it's just such a small portion that it's one of those mundane things that while in the game it makes it interesting. It's like there was a movie, I love the opening monologue, Rubber. They bring up like, why don't you see people eat in movies or do all this stuff or do like your day-to-day stuff? It's because there's no importance to it. It doesn't add to the movie itself.
Mm-hmm.
So I think
that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know. I just hope there's more of this in the future, but we'll see. With most of what Miike's done, there hasn't been a whole lot of sequels or follow-ups to his work. So
hey, maybe someone else take a crack at it. I mean, considering how popular they are now in the West, I mean, I'm surprised that no one really has tried to do an adaptation here in the States by now. I really hope they don't because no one will get it right. But still, maybe someone in Japan will take another crack at it at this point, considering it's been almost 20 years since I came out now. So,
or even just a resurgence of the goofy action Yakuza films.
Mm-hmm.
Like, granted, like even without the like game adaptation portion, there's a lot of like just overarching Yakuza themes that this did a really good job of making fun of that I really enjoyed, and I would have enjoyed more.
Well, actually, I might be a little biased in my rating and why I didn't give it weird now that I think about it, because Miike's done a couple, since this, he's done a couple other, or no, he did one before this called Full Metal Yakuza, and the dude is a cyborg Yakuza with a giant member.
See, that I want more of that, and I want it easier to get a hold of.
Yeah, or Yakuza Apocalypse, where they throw in vampires and a dude in a frog costume that's the strongest being to exist.
Yes, we need a resurgence of that.
I was thinking of that GIF you had randomly sent me where it was just a guy in that frog costume just beating the crap out of everybody. I don't know why I went back to that, but okay, so that was from a Yakuza movie. I was right.
Yeah, that's from Yakuza Apocalypse.
Okay, so
another Miike movie.
I feel like these movies would now be really popular here in the States. And they just never, like, there wasn't a good way to watch them unless you knew about them already to order them, or you got lucky and you had a friend who knew about them. They would be so popular now.
Well, so, and I can probably attest to why we haven't been getting, if there are any overseas, anyone listening, please reach out, let us know, because I have no clue. But I know that from tweets I've seen from the owner of Third Window Films, it's been, at least in the past, it's been difficult to get licensure to bring it over. One, it's an expense because you got to have a translator, you got to program it all. But also, there's this. He brought up at one point that there's this thing where they're not very trusting of giving us the media that they produce still, because when they do make it at the end of the day, Yakuza, as much as we love it, it was originally a piece of media that was not made for us, though.
Sure.
So,
however, I do think we are reaching the point where the amount of people who'd be willing to spend a good chunk of change to get a hold of these, even if it's new to them, even if they haven't like seen it or know anything about it, I think we're getting to a point where people are interested enough in like the more niche stuff coming out of Japan that's either lighthearted or the weird romance stuff. Like all of that has such a bigger following than it did 10, 20 years ago. I think we could like start hoping that maybe soon we can see it.
Yeah, considering even like 20 years ago, like anime was not as big at the time, and now anime is just a part of our culture, and like everyone's either into something related to, like an anime, or they know like I can't remember crap, his name's escaping me. He just passed away. He was a guy who created Dragon Ball, and I can't remember his name right now.
Akira Toriyama.
Yeah,
like everyone felt that. Like I think I told you I don't know Dragon Ball that well, but I was very upset that happened because he was such an important part of really all of our pop culture now in the States. Like I feel like I said before, I don't think we were ready for a Yakuza adaptation at the time, but now we definitely are, or at least give me like a goofy over the top, like you mentioned that one where the frog was beating up everybody and that's about vampires. Like, I would go, if you told me that's in theaters right now, I would buy a ticket and go watch it and have a great time, because that's a movie that I would want to watch in theaters. And we don't really have any movie like that coming out probably this year that I can think of off the top of my head, or probably in the past 2 years, really. So, and to bring it into a point you mentioned to me before, Godzilla, the newest one, not the King Kong one where they fought, the newest Godzilla, that was, you said it was brilliant, and I regret not seeing it in theaters. And I think because of how good that did, maybe we would be ready for more adaptations from Japan, considering just how amazing a piece of that film was, and everyone I saw online kept saying.
And you're hitting on a little bit something that's a little bit more of a complex issue, is because movies have become such a money making thing. We have lost the mid-budget movies, or we either have like really low budget or we have high-end budget. Whereas Japan, their budget is that mid-range budget that we used to have in the US. Like, yeah, I think Godzilla still took like 10, $15 million to make, but it was still like 20, 30 million below the other big Hollywood movies that were.
That's true, but
even like the first Avengers movie, it cost like a good, I don't know, 20, 30 million to make as it is. Like, and that costs so much less than that. That's impressive considering how good all of Godzilla looked.
Mm-hmm. That's true, but I do think we're getting really close to a really big breaking point in middle media, which for a while was taken up by the streaming services who were backing things. And a lot of those streaming services are now making either very poor business decisions or losing followers from just being who they are and their choices. And I think we're going to start to see a break where there are going to be more independent people out there who are able to finally be able to make stuff without having to have like one or two companies try and back them. So I think we're getting close to that point. We just got to wait for the storm to pass.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm very curious, but yeah, I don't know. I had a good time talking about this movie, regardless of whether we hate it or liked it. I mean, it just...
Yeah.
Oh no, I love this. Also, I don't know if any of you caught it, but I had to watch this several times back to back to back. The baseballs were actually very large golf balls.
Were they?
Yeah, and every time he hits a home run, he says, touchdown!
I didn't notice that.
Cal, go ahead and plug your stuff, man.
Yeah, so follow me on Twitch. YouTube pretty recently, I was going to start uploading some of my highlight reels because I have an editor who edits my stuff. But Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, I am the same name, Kalloth0467. Check me out. I play a little bit of everything. Funny, I've been only playing Yakuza games, and I guess I am a Yakuza streamer mostly, but I play a little bit of everything. I just like having a fun time. That's how I met Nacho, and that's how we've been... I've known you for almost 2 years now, actually, now that I think about it, considering it was right around September that I think... September, October, I met you for the first time on a raid, so...
Yeah, you were playing the Japanese dub of Spider-Man.
I remember thinking that was such a clever idea, and like looking back on it, like I really am glad I got to see it from a different perspective, but clearly I could tell like it was not meant to be played in Japanese, because like some of the acting was not as great as the English, but still. I had a fun time with it. It was nice to play it modded. I look forward to doing another review with you guys again, because I enjoyed the heck out of it like I did the first time.
Hell yeah, and we're looking forward to having you back on again. Maybe we'll do something not as video game related, but...
Maybe.
We'll think of something. I mean, I know we got movies out there we can talk about.
Sonic 2's coming out soon.
Is it? I thought we were on Sonic 3.
Maybe. I don't know. I haven't been keeping track.
I know there's another one coming eventually. That's all I know, so...
True.
Whenever it's going to happen.
Anywho, this has been the Good, the Bad, and the Weird Spotlights.
Thanks for listening.
Peace. Thank you for stopping by this here town of the good, the bad, and the weird. We appreciate your listenership, and if you want more of our takes in your life, feel free to check us out on social media at The Good, the Bad, and the Weird Podcast, or TGTBTW for short. As well, if we missed a fact, your favorite part of a movie, or just have a suggestion and want to reach out and say howdy, feel free to email us at tgtbtwpodcast@gmail.com. And feel free to join our Discord at The Good, the Bad, and the Weird Podcast, where we talk about movies, just share random banter here and there. And always, check out our podcasters, streamers, or any other content creator we shout out in our episodes. We really appreciate it. And as always, thank you for listening. Peace!